Get it.
Okay. I think it's safe to say that at this point in the year, many of us are getting a little tired of this cold weather, right?
Here, here.
Well, one way that I personally like to stay warm is by surrounding myself with an excess amount of blankets. Tie blankets are fun and easy to make, and they make great gifts or can be used for your own personal comfort. My mom has been sewing for years, and she knows all about different crafty type things. So when I wanted to make a gift for my newborn cousin a few years ago, she taught me the basics of how to make a tie blanket. So there are 3 main parts that you will need to know about in order to make your own tie blanket. You need to prep your fabric, cut, and of course, tie. So the first thing you're going to do is prep your fabric. For this particular blanket, I used 1 yard of 2 different fleece fabrics, which is kind of this softer material. And you can adjust the size for whatever you want. 1 yard is probably good for a baby blanket, which is this, it's a little smaller. So if you wanted one for yourself, I would suggest doing about 2 yards. So once you have your size and your patterns figured out, you're going to make sure also you want to have 1 plain color and then 1 patterned. So I have Snoopy and then I have yellow. And then you're going to want to make sure you put one on top of the other with the right sides facing out. So what that means is the right side is the more vivid colored side as opposed to the blurred side, which is a little more fuzzy, so you want that in the middle. Once you have them laid out, one on top of the other, you are ready to start cutting. The first thing you're going to want to do is to cut out each of your 4 corners. So you can take a sewing ruler, and for this case, I cut out a 4 by 4 inch square out of each corner. Of course, again, you can adjust this for whatever size you need to. So I cut out each square already, and then you are ready to start cutting your strips. So since obviously I cut 4 inches into the blanket for my square, I'm going to want to cut 4 inches into the blanket for my strips. So I used a pen to mark each of my points to kind of guide it when I cut. So then I also did about 1 inch between each of the strips. So now that I have it marked out, I can cut. If you will refer to your handout, you'll see something that is called a rotary cutter. This is another tool that you can use to cut rather than these fabric scissors if you prefer that. This particular image is taken from Prints to Polka Dots, which is a website that sells rotary cutters. So if you want to use either rotary cutter or fabric scissors, I would suggest that rather than regular scissors, which may not give you a good cut and may stretch your fabric. If you could put those handouts away now, that would be great. So as you can see, I have finished cutting my strips. So I can move on to tying. There are 3 main ties that you can use, and you can choose which one you want and kind of personalize your own blanket. The first is a simple double knot. So what you're going to want to do is take your strands and you're going to separate them and kind of create an X around your finger. So you're going to take 1 strand and put it on top of your finger, the other strand behind your finger, cross them at the top, and pull whatever's behind down and through the hole that your finger has created, and pull to tighten. Then of course, since it is a double knot, you're going to want to do that same step again. So you'll put 1 on top of your finger, the other behind, cross them at the top, and pull down through the hole that your finger's created, and pull to tighten. And I can show that step again, and if you have troubles, of course, you can always ask me or reference anything. So I will put the patterned piece on top of my finger, the yellow behind, then I'll cross the yellow over the patterned at the top, pull down through the hole, and tighten. And then again for the double knot, this time the yellow is on top, the pattern is behind, my pattern is going over the yellow, and the yellow is coming down through the hole that my fingers created. And that's your simple double knot. The next knot that you can use is a loop. This time you're going to have both of your strands together, and you're going to kind of use one of your fingers to loop it around your fabric. So I take my finger and I loop it around the fabric to create a little pretzel looking thing, and then you take the ends and push it through the hole that your finger has created. Sometimes it's a little tough to get it through the hole, but you just have to kind of work with it and pull it through the end, and then you want to push the knot up, and there you have it. As you can see, this is the knot that I've used for the other sides because I personally find it easiest to use, but again, it's personal preference, so you can choose whichever knot you want. and I can show that step again. So take your finger and kind of wrap it around and use your other hand to push the ends through the hole that your finger has created and pull the strands up and tighten. The third and final knot, you're going to need an extra slit, which I have already previously cut in here. This time you are going to take both strands and go up and down through the slit and pull out the other side. This one is almost kind of a prettier knot. I just prefer not to do it because then you have to go through and give an extra cut to each of your strands, but a lot of people like to do this because I think it's easier than messing with different strands. So one more time, you go up, down through both slits, and pull to tighten. And those are your 3 knots. So as you can see, tie blankets are very fun to make and they're very easy. You just need to know how to prep your fabric, how to cut, and of course how to tie. So even though the weather may be getting a little unbearable at this point in the year, you can now stay warm and comfy because you know how to make a tie blanket.
Thank you very much.